Stan, we're live.
Well, my friends, welcome to a special emergency edition of In the Dugout. Unprecedented activity at the United States Capitol. I'm sure all of you are well aware, have seen it. It's hard to know how to think about it. Let me just first say, please, to the protesters, keep it peaceful. We've heard of shots being fired, victims being carted away or taken away in an ambulance. We don't know who fired the shots, who started it. By the looks of it, and again, excuse me for monitoring my TV screens, but I want to keep you apprised and discuss what is a momentous day in American history. And while the media and the political elite are dumbfounded and shocked and stunned by it, I'm not. Let me say we never condone violence, ever. But how much more can we take before people speak out in some fashion? And I hope that what you're seeing today ends up being nothing more than a peaceful protest. But let me tell you what, this has been building for months and months and months. And I'm going to get into that in just a second. I'm going to give you a Declaration of Independence style list of grievances just in the last 10 months. And that's just off the top of my head that I was able to put together in the last 2 minutes. I do not think what you're seeing here on the Capitol, again, unprecedented. We know there's been some shots in crowds that big with emotions that high. There's bound to be overreactions. But from what I am seeing, I am not seeing the kind of mass chaos. I am not seeing the looting, the wanton disregard for safety and property and other people's health that we saw with the riots in the summer. Of course, there's going to be an isolated event here or there with groups this large. This will not become another Portland Chaz, a Capitol Hill autonomous zone. I'm quite certain that when President Trump asks them to leave, they will leave peacefully. And I hope there will be very little damage. And I'm very sorry for any injuries that have already occurred, but this is not the same as what you saw, at least as far as the level of violence. But if the people over the summer that we saw had the right to protest, and they did it violently, they destroyed property, they hurt people, they murdered people, then these people have the right to protest. I don't care if it's in the middle of a congressional hearing. That is the people's house. That is our house. Again, let me go through this with you, then we'll take some callers here. Again, never justifying violence, but think of it. After almost a year of pandemic fear, being locked down, having our First Amendment rights to meet, to see our family, our religious rights, our rights to assemble religiously, after seeing those rights trampled, being thrown out of our jobs, having to shut down our businesses, being lied to by medical and political hacks, seeking to take advantage, to heighten the fear so they can obtain more power. After seeing our cities and towns burned to the ground, looters ignored by the police or by the authorities, criminals arrested, then set free immediately to terrorize again, then witnessing, apparently obvious voter fraud at some level. It obviously took place, enough to overturn an election, who knows? Seeing the courts fail to engage, knowing that the next administration will raise our taxes and limit our freedoms even more when it comes to energy and healthcare and God knows what else. And then today, again, the court's doing nothing. And then today, hearing those politicians say, including the vice president, who I still think is an honorable man, but still hearing him say, I'm not putting him at blame, but hearing him say, and then some of the members in the Senate and the House say, I don't care that 140 million people think that that election was rigged. We are on a discard. We're not going to hear anything. We're not going to hear evidence. We're just going to move forward as if it doesn't happen. Legitimate concerns over election integrity. I don't know what's true or what's not. And then having Americans continually told by the political elites that our voice doesn't matter. What the hell do they expect is going to happen? There comes a point. There comes a point. It's in our DNA. This is not unbelievable, the way that the media is portraying it. This is not the darkest day in American history as the media portrays it. This is what our DNA is. This is what we do. This is what you can expect to happen and should expect to happen when tyranny is continually imposed over we, the people. It's in our DNA. What you are seeing is not chaos, anarchy. It's respect and desire for the rule of law and for freedom. That is a passion for freedom that they feel is being taken away from them, and they have a right to have their voices heard, and they need those elected officials in that U.S. Capitol to hear them. Now, I don't think it's going to change any of their minds, but this is not unbelievable. This is what you get when government oversteps its bounds time after time after time. All right, Larry, who do we want to go to? I see we've got some people waiting here.
Great question. Let's go to Susan first. Susan, I'm going to unmute you, and if you want to say something, please jump right in.
Susan, are you there? All right, let's try somebody else.
Let's try our friend Chad Callahan. He's always quick on the button.
Chad Callahan, old friend of the show. What do you think? What are your comments on what's going on in D.C. today?
I think we're watching an unprecedented historical event that is going to have far-reaching effects for a very, very long time. I feel that, and I don't like seeing a protester stand in the House of the People. I really don't. I feel that what happened here is when people get pushed and election integrity is called into question. I mean, everything in America is about trust. Whether we have an exchange of civility, whether it's goods or services, whether it's votes, people need to trust each other. And when that trust is removed, this is what we get. And it is a terrible thing.
When you say trust, what do you mean trust has been removed?
It's, for example, when we remove the security measures on mail-in ballots, that removed the trust from the election. People did trust it. Now, whether there was election fraud or not, there was no way to prove or disprove it. So people are very unhappy with, what has unfolded here, and rightfully so. If you can't believe in the process, then why do you believe in anything?
So what are you saying, Chad? Are you saying, do you think these people, we don't want to see violence, we don't want to see the potential for violence, but these people are frustrated and they've lost trust in their government, and they want their elected officials to hear them, and they are speaking out. Do you support them if they stay peaceful, or do you not?
I support all peaceful protest, and but everybody knows, is that the old saying goes, the tree of liberty is raised of the blood of patriots, and I don't ever want it to see that. I mean, that's just, I don't want to be there. I've seen it with my own two eyes, and I don't want to see it again. But there's folks in government that have to stop being so elitist and so removed from the average American.
Well, that's it. That's exactly what I'm saying. I mean, if we look at I don't know how much you heard of my sort of opening comments here, but after a year of seeing these elitists in government think that they can control every aspect of our life and trample on us and restrict us and lock us down and maybe even then stick their heads in the sand when there at least appears to be enough evidence to justify an investigation into voter election fraud or unconstitutional acts. It's the elites. It's the people against the elites. And I think government has gotten far too elitist. Your final thoughts, then we'll move on, Chad.
Yeah, I mean, we need to govern from the middle. That's, that is America, government shouldn't be concerned about feelings. Government should be concerned about providing services and providing law and order and stability. When you start engaging in trying to govern around social mores, that is going to be a moving target forever, and you're never going to achieve it. So government needs to move slow, needs to be trusted, and right now nobody trusts it.
Yep, and this is the result you get. All right, Chad, thank you for calling in. Larry, who are we going to next?
Tony was up next. Tony, I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself.
Hello, Tony. Welcome to In the Dugout. How are you today?
You talking to me?
Yes,
I'm
we
Tony
are, Tony.
D.
Go ahead, Tony D. What do you got to say?
Hi. With regard to what's happening in Washington, I'm quite sad and at the same time quite angry.
Who are you sad at? What are you sad about?
I'm sad about the fact that, following Chuck's comment, no trust. So if people don't have trust, they don't trust the process. If they don't trust the process of democracy, then we have no democracy.
So are you sad that the process is...
Let me just finish.
Let me just add, I'm trying to clarify. Are you sad at the process or are you sad at the people?
I'm sorry, we were talking over each other. What did you ask me?
Are you sad at the process that it's gotten to this point, or are you sad at the people for reacting this way?
Well, up to now, in terms of the presidential election, as far as the evidence goes, the process has been followed. And the last piece, in terms of appointing or having a new president take office, was today's ceremony, and it's been interrupted by people who have maybe very well-meaning, but in interrupting the process, we don't have a democracy. When we played basketball,
what if the process is unconstitutional? What if the process? Let me
just finish my comment, please.
Well, make your point. This is the discussion. We have back and forth. All right, Tony, let's agree. We're going to have back and forth here.
Mike, I don't hear too well. So let me just say a few things and then I'll stop. Really, I have a hearing disability. When people play in the NBA, they play a game of basketball. Everybody wants to win. Nobody wants to lose. And they play by a set of rules. And at the end of the game, somebody's won, somebody's lost. Now, if the people who lose don't accept that they lost because of some infraction, they're going to blame the officials.
Tony, please make your point. Please make your point.
We don't have a game. We don't have democracy if nobody accepts if people aren't going to accept the results.
Well, I get that, but what if the referees are crooked?
Say that again.
What if the referees are crooked? We had that in the NBA.
I hear you. NBA. I understand that. I hear you.
All right, Tony, thank you. Thank you. We're going to move on. Larry, who do you have next? A lot of people lined up. We got to make this go quick. Go ahead, Larry.
Let's see if Adri wants to say hello.
Adri,
unmute yourself.
Yeah, most people can listen. All I can do is listen to this.
All right, Adri just wants to listen. All right, Larry, let's move on.
Let's try. We got a 401 number here, so I'm going to admit them and see if they want to talk. So just say hello, Stan, and see if they want to say hi. 401-827. You're on the air on In the Dugout. Hello.
Hello, Mike. This is Ron Nagel. Happy New Year to you.
Ron Nagel, good to hear from you, my friend.
Well, it's not very happy right now in the new year knowing what's going on, and I'm really deeply disturbed.
Yeah, tell me what you're disturbed at. Are you disturbed at the people for storming the Capitol? Are you disturbed at the process that caused them to feel that way?
I'm disturbed by our weak-kneed Republicans that need to grow a pair and stand up for the American people and quit knuckling in to Big Brother or the swamp or the New World Order, whatever you want to call them. They have such control. They're controlling all our institutions, CIA, FBI, judicial system. The Supreme Court is even tainted. We have former presidents going against this. This is absolutely ridiculous. The blatant cheating that's going on, and the Supreme Court won't even recognize it. What do we need them for?
So Ron, so as long as the protests here stay peaceful, we know they've breached security, but are you in support of those protesters today?
Yes, I am. A lot more of us should be down there protesting, but we're trying to feed our families, run our businesses, keep society going. Because remember, it's us who work who cover the people who don't work. And the people who don't work are starting to outnumber us hardworking people that only want a fair shot at society. That's what all those people are down there in Washington for. We're going to have 2 years of Chuck Schumer running the Senate, and Nancy, who barely hung on, the Wicked Witch of the West.
All right, let's.
With Biden running the country, we're doomed. There won't be an America left in 2 years. There's not going to be anything left with these people.
All right. Well, it is a frustrating time for all. We have a lot of apprehensions about what's going on. They're overt calls for socialism and anti-American ideals. It bothers me. Again, there's always a question, where's the line? When do you cross the line? I don't know. I support the attitude of those protesters. Did they cross the line? If they committed violence, yes, they crossed the line. But right now, I'm going to say that is constitutional freedom in action. Ron, thank you for calling in. You are a great American. I just let everyone know, he is an employer. He works his butt off with his cell phone, small business. He employs many Rhode Islanders. And I thank you for helping make this state and this country grow. Thank you, Ron. Okay,
well,
Larry.
Thanks, Mike, for giving me a voice.
All right, thank
you.
you.
We have Patrick up next. Patrick, if you'd like to unmute yourself, do so now.
Thank you, Larry. Patrick Humphreys, you're on In the Dugout. Please unmute yourself and let us know what your comment is.
Well, I just got an email. I hadn't participated in this group before, but I know some people in Rhode Island. I was disturbed at what's going on. Yes, I think the protest should be held. Should they be breaking into the Capitol, into the House chamber itself? No. Unfortunately, it makes us look bad. It makes us look like the other side, unfortunately.
Well, let me ask you this, Patrick. I agree. If we start wanton destruction, if we start hurting people, if we start, but I'm looking at people, I don't know if you saw the earlier, they were just walking through the Capitol almost like they were on a tour. They were just walking through, wanting to have their voice heard. So again, I don't think it's like the other side, at least at this point, it isn't to me. So you mentioned disturbed. Again, I'll ask you, like I asked the prior callers, are you disturbed at the protesters for taking it too far? Are you disturbed at the process and the 9 months of frustration we've all been under that has brought us to that point? Which one are you more disturbed at?
Oh, I'm disturbed by what's happened up to this point, of course. I mean, and it would be nice if somebody actually said, well, I've heard comments that never before has, federal government grounds been attacked like this. And I'm like, wait a minute, they were doing the White House earlier. They were doing federal courthouses in Portland, et cetera. Unfortunately, the way the media is going to, and we have to be cognizant of what the media is going to do with it, which is unfortunate. It would be nice if we could just stay with straight facts.
All right. Well, thank you for weighing in, Patrick. I'm going to go over some other comments once we get through some callers, but I want to give all the callers a chance to talk first. Patrick, thank you for calling in. Larry, who's next?
We got Amar up next. Amar, unmute yourself and say hello.
Amar, if you're there, unmute yourself. You're on in the dugout.
Trump is very below. Just kidding, Nancy Pelosi is good.
What is that, Larry?
I think I heard Trump was good, but I can't be sure. Thanks, Amar.
Was that a sound effect Amar made, or was he in the middle of some kind of rally or something?
Hard to tell. Whatever it was interesting. Thanks.
All right. Did we ever get the person on 827 to talk? I can't remember.
That was our friend Ron Nagel.
Oh, that was Ron. Okay.
Ron,
All right. So let's.
Is at the rally right now. At the rally. So live call in from the rally right there.
Who's that? Amar?
Yeah.
Well, let's get Amar back on. See if we can get a conversation.
Unmute yourself again. We would love to hear a little bit more.
Amar, where are you?
At Washington, D.C.
Are you? That's quite an effect you have for your voice. Are you doing that on purpose to hide your voice?
Fuck you. You're right.
All right, enough of that. Let's get rid of Amar.
Oh,
and
we tried.
remove Amar. This is the danger of these kinds of calls. Okay. Wow. Now that I don't condone. If that person was at the rally, that is not the kind of thing I condone. All right, let me go on. And I'm not sure. I know it looks like everyone who's on the Zoom right now has already had a chance to talk. Raise your hand. I think you know how to raise your hand in the participant area of Zoom if you want to weigh in. But let me go on and talk about a few other things now that we've gotten through our first batch of callers. And it sounds like me, I think most sound like me, where we understand the frustrations that many Americans have gone through the last 9 or 10 months or year, especially heightened by all the controversies around the election. They have a right to protest. Seems like everybody has some sympathy for the protesters. Whether or not storming and breaking into the Capitol crosses the line or not, probably does, but it's understandable as long as they keep it peaceful. You know, I think in the end it will be seen as a good day in American history when the voice of the people spoke out in the only way they were allowed to. They have not been allowed to speak out. Their state legislatures have refused to meet to adjudicate these issues. The courts have not agreed to engage, and now Congress looks like they're summarily shooting down their concerns, as is the vice president. Let me talk about the vice president for a second. Anyone who is a Trump supporter, including Donald Trump himself, wanted the vice president to unilaterally send some of the electors back to their states for reconsideration. I do not believe it's clear in the Constitution that he has those powers. I believe it's questionable. He could have been bold and forward and done that. But I think he believed, and his advisors obviously believed, that he did not have those, as he said in his letter, his unilateral powers, even though he sympathizes with those of us who believe there were severe problems with this election. I mean, severe problems. And I think he is an honorable guy trying to do what he believes is the constitutional and honorable thing. As much as it might disappoint Trump supporters or any of you, I honestly believe that Mike Pence is a good man. I've always liked him, and he's doing the honorable thing. I do not think we should be thinking him as a deep state plant. I sincerely hope that he is not. But many people, there's been all kinds of rumors. I mean, hell, that this Lynn Wood lawyer, well, up until now, seemed like an honorable guy. But Lynn Wood said not only is he a deep stater, he's treasonous, and he should be put in front of a firing squad. The vice president. Oh, come on. Boy, that is not the kind of rhetoric that we need. I mean, you don't say anything like that unless you have the proof right there to back you up, right there at that minute, not days to come. How many times have we heard that? Oh yeah, just wait a few more days, it's coming. In fact, that's one of my frustrations. Listen, I have been a supporter of this president. I believe this president is right in believing this election may have been stolen from him. I'm not sure I believe in the way he's conducted himself since the election, especially since he, his legal team, have been kept promising us, right? Promising us, oh, the big news is going to come. In fact, he promised those protesters today that something big and something new was going to be revealed. Well, it hasn't. Will it? I don't know. Doesn't look like it. You know, this constant, oh yeah, just wait another day. Just give us 10 more days. Just give us 5 more days. My goodness. You either got to put up or shut up. If you've got the goods, then put it up, and then we will demand that justice be exacted on those individuals who may have perpetrated treasonous or other unlawful crimes in this election. But this, I mean, it has been. I mean, yes, we've seen. So let's go through what we've seen and what the options are, and still may be for Trump supporters and the president. All right. So the state legislatures are really the constitutionally defined line of defense. It is absolutely true, in my view. Now, listen, I'm not a lawyer, but you know, I'm a smart guy, and I've talked to lawyers, and I've listened to all the arguments, and I've read some of the legal briefs. There is no question that, and Rhode Island being one of them, and I'm going to get into that in a second, that many states unconstitutionally held elections this year. There's no question about that. So that's one angle that I think pro-Trump supporters, or just any American, should understand was real. But yet no court wanted to hear those cases. For whatever reason, whether it was the wrong person who didn't have standing filing, or it was the wrong time, you should have filed before the election, and others say, well, it's too late to file after the election. If you filed before the election, well, you haven't suffered any harm yet. So the court have been spinning everybody around. That's one angle, and I believe that's the most legitimate angle out there. The other angle is the fraud. You know, are dead people voting? Where's their ballot stuffing? You know, were their ballots manufactured in other states and shipped across lines and machine printed or filled out en masse by thousands of or hundreds of partisans just filling in Joe Biden's name? I mean, that would be terrible, but we don't have that proof. We've heard a lot of talk from experts, but nobody has given us that smoking gun yet. I still believe that could be a possibility that those things happened. And I probably believe that those things happened. But if you're going to make those kinds of accusations at a national level, you have to have the proof. Now, I know that courts and counties and have stopped people from reviewing that information, having access to it in order to analyze it. But my goodness. But still, so that's the third, and then the fourth path, the third path then is the potential election unintegrity are these Dominion voting machines. Now, again, we know there was a problem in Michigan with that one machine that flipped 6,000 votes. We had a state senator, a Republican from Michigan, on this very show last month, and she believes, she is convinced that was human error. Not evidence, not the tip of the iceberg of systematic fraud. But you've heard people like Sidney Powell make incredible claims about foreign interference, about votes being sent overseas, whether it's to Germany or Italy or wherever, and adjudicated there and then sent back with different totals back. Again, you can't make those claims until you have the smoking gun that you can show us, the people. It may be true. It sounds like a Robert Ludlum spy novel, and trust me, I've read a lot of Robert Ludlum spy novels, a lot of Tom Clancy spy novels. I mean, the conspiracies I've heard, theories, the international ones, are incredible. I mean, they would put any of these fictional works to shame. Sometimes, what do they say? Real life is weirder than fantasy or fiction. I don't know the saying. I'm not good at those kind of sayings. If somebody can put it in the comments, I'll do it. But again, you can't make these kinds of claims without the proof. Rudy Giuliani said it best today when he spoke to the crowds at the mall about 10 o'clock this morning, 10:30 this morning, maybe 11 o'clock. He said, listen, the coming weeks are going to prove whether or not we are fools for putting forth these theories, or there will be criminals, or we will find that there are real criminals out there who must be held accountable. And he's right about that. You know, is Sidney Powell a fool? Is Rudy Giuliani a fool? Is Lynn Wood a fool? Is Trump himself a fool? You know, Jenna Ellis, his other attorney, are they fools? Or are they right to some degree, and there really is criminal activity out there? But again, you can't say it unless you have the goods. Now, the one before the Senate and the House were shut down because of these protests. And I see Peter Donito. Peter, you made a great comment here. Let's just talk about that for a second. Peter writes on our comment, if the Dems are so adamant they ran a clean election, then why are they so vigorously obstructing further investigation? If there's nothing to hide, why are they hiding it? Great question. But it still doesn't prove anything. It's a great question. It raises suspicions. But still, it doesn't mean that the pro-Trump team has more proof just because the other side is being obstinate. That's a great question. But as I was saying, right before the protesters shut down the Capitol, and I'm looking here, and it doesn't look like people are leaving yet. I can't tell. You guys might have a better view. Can let me know. I'm a little off. But Ted Cruz put forth what I think is the perfect solution. And again, I'd like you to call in, comment, if you think this is a good idea or not a good idea. But Ted Cruz went back to the 1877 Congress after the 1876 election. Apparently, there was some dispute between Rutherford B. Hayes and I can't remember the opponent's name offhand. And that Congress, during this similar period of certifying the results, decided to put a 10-day commission together to look at the votes. And I'm not exactly sure how that outcome came. I know that Hayes ended up winning. But here's why I think it's a good idea. First, from a people's point of view, Ted Cruz and Langford, the other senator from Oklahoma, that's his name, I think, right? Langford, both made this point. We got 140 million people out there in America. This is what polling shows, who believe this election was rigged. We cannot just sit here and say, shut up, stick your head in the sand, we're going to pretend nothing ever happened and that your voice doesn't matter. But on the other hand, without that proof we talked about, we can't vote to decertify state electors. Larry, after I finish this thought, hold on. To decertify state electors just because a president and many of his supporters in Congress or out, or the people think so. Either one would be a travesty. What we should do is take 10 days to have the hearings that have never been had. Open hearings in front of the American public. 15-person commission or some kind of commission. where all the evidence can be presented. Don't forget, in all the court losses the Trump team and his allies have had, there's never been a hearing, right? There's never been a hearing where the evidence has been aired and challenged. They've always been shut down before it got to a hearing. Let's have the hearing, so at least we can say to the Democrat side, thank you, we were reasonable, you know, and now if there was no evidence that could be proven, now they have a right to say, we heard your voice, we looked at it, it was determined no, and all of us should have better faith in our elections. And to the Trump supporters, you could say the same thing. Listen, your voice was heard, we acted on it, we looked at the evidence in an open forum, and this is the result, whatever that result would be. That way, either side could say we took a reasonable and studied and statesmanship approach towards this. Ted Cruz today showed me a lot. He showed me a lot. He is a true statesman, and he will be my leading candidate right now for 2024. Put up a contentious run against Trump last time. That was fun to watch. But I think that is the path we must take. How can we just say no to 140 million people? Not even give it a second thought, not even ever have even one investigatory hearing of any kind. But how can to the other 200 million people in America we say, well, we're just going to overturn your results without any such kind of hearing? Both of those are losing options. The winning option is transparency, is openness. We need this government to be open and transparent. Let us see the evidence. Let us hear the evidence. Let us make a collective judgment. And then maybe we can bridge that gap and move together with a better appreciation for what the truth is. Okay, Larry, sorry about that. What do you got for us?
We have Roland on the line. I'm going to let Roland in right now.
To be open and transparent. Let us see the evidence. Let us.
Roland, mute your YouTube while you're talking to me.
#6.
No, just mute your YouTube on your computer, and then talk to me on your phone. I guess. Are you calling in?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Mute the YouTube on your computer and then talk on the phone.
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Yes, I
How you
did.
doing, Roland? What do you think of all this?
I think it's very possible that maybe, and this is conspiracy, that some Antifa have infiltrated the crowds, although it appears that there aren't that many to, get all the Trump supporters to, violate and breach the Capitol Police. I think that's wrong. Okay, that isn't why I called in. Mike, did you
Wait a
see
minute.
the
That's a
video
good point,
where-
though, Roland. That's a good point, because I was thinking the same thing. Because listen, if you and I went to protest, or anyone we know went to protest, it would be peaceful. We know that Americans are peaceful and respect the rule of law. So it would surprise me certainly if there was any mass violence. An isolated incident, I could understand, but it did cross my mind. I wonder if somebody from the left is trying to make those protesters look bad. Anyway, that's a very fair thought, Roland. All right, go ahead to your next point.
Yeah. Well, that was actually, they were actually accused of infiltrating the Trumpster ranks last night, when they were just on the mall. But anyways, I got, did you see the video where Jovan Pulitzer, the guy who invented the QR code and a bunch of other things, where he was able to hack the Dominion voting machines in Fulton County in Georgia?
Yes, I saw his testimony in front of the Senate committee in Georgia. Okay. Yes, I did see that.
Okay. Did you notice the media just didn't latch on to that? There was unless you were like a news junkie like you and I, and we go digging,
right,
where the media doesn't want to. But do you notice that there was never any results of, because the subcommittee actually allowed him to show them how he did it. There was no media coverage. And then he examined the ballots and he showed that most of the ballots were frauds. Again, no media coverage. So, okay.
Well, let me comment on that, Roland. And you're right about that. But the media coverage isn't what's important. The media, we know how they're going to be. We know that they were complicit and they're part of the problem. We know that. And I think that's part of, I should have added that to my list of grievances in my opening remarks, you know, to see the media and the big tech be so overtly against the public. But what matters is having a real national debate on these facts, on these questions, and we need some kind of hearing, public hearing in the courts or in Congress to see all this evidence, so we can bypass the media, live, just like the Watergate hearings. You remember when John Dean testified? I mean,
yes,
some people don't remember. You know, we need to have that. And then we can, you know, are all these rumors real or are they fake? You know, I don't know the answer. Right? I don't know.
Because because we're going to be in for 4 years of any election, whether it's local for the dog officer, that the elections was fair. It's just going to be a question in people's mind. I think I can accept that, you know, Biden won or them two guys from Georgia won if everything was fair. But I just don't. And for 4 years that I won't. I have a process question for you. I don't know because I've read it and seen it both ways. Let's suppose Ted Cruz does get his way. So in other words, if either chamber comes back, one says no, the other one says yes, we're going to contest the electoral votes. Can Pence, in his purview, order that 10-day examination, and at the end of it, if sufficient enough, actually ask the Supreme Court to weigh in on it?
Well, I have to tell you, I don't know the answer, but here's my guess, okay, at it. First of all, I do not think Pence, unless both chambers agree to reject the electors from that state, they remain. Both chambers have to reject it. If there's a split, it's unclear, but Mike Pence has said he will not unilaterally make that decision. Now, you could argue that if one chamber voted to reject him and another didn't, but we know that's not going to happen because we know that Mitch McConnell and a whole bunch of, so that's not going to happen. So let's not deal in that speculation because it's not going to happen. We heard Mitch McConnell and other senators say that they do not support this challenge. Now, would they support the commission? Well, that's a very different question. And I don't think that Pence could rule on that on his own. I think that some senator from the floor would probably make a motion now that the idea has been officially put forth. And then that emotion would be, you know, I'm not sure what the rules are for accepting and voting on that motion in the middle of this count, but and the same thing would probably have to happen in the House. I think it's a great solution, but I sincerely doubt that there are enough brave or even open-minded Republicans, never mind Democrats, to even see that come to fruition. I think it's the best idea, Roland, but I still don't think it has a chance in hell of happening because everybody's just locked in to their tribe right now, to their position, and let's go from there. All right.
Well,
as always, Roland, thanks. Okay. You can stay on the line if you want. We'll just mute you for now. Larry, I know we had some, we just got a question. I know we have some footage from DC. While we talk to our next guest, can you cue that up for a few minutes from now?
Absolutely, Stan. Let me get that queued up for us.
All right, let's talk to Harold right now. Does Harold want to speak?
Harold, if you'd like to say hello, unmute yourself.
Unmute yourself and start your video. I saw Harold's video a little while ago.
No, Harold.
No, Harold. Harold, if you're there, maybe he stepped away. We'll try to come back to him later. Larry, how long is it going to take for the video?
Oh, I need 2 minutes on that stuff.
All right. That's right. So I'll just comment a little bit. I'll just explain what we have. So one Rhode Island patriot from, I believe, from Tiverton. I'm sure we wouldn't mind us using his name. We'll just call him Terry for now. Well, his name's out there in the comments. Terry Garvey is at the Washington, D.C. rally. He has been trying to upload some video from yesterday. He was there yesterday for some of the protests, if you would. He was there today. We don't know where he was today. In fact, if Terry can even call into the show, if he's got cell connectivity, with tens or hundreds of thousands of people, it's unclear if there's any good connectivity down there in a crowd that big. It kind of overwhelms the mobile spots. But Terry, of course, is invited to call in and tell us where he is in this melee, if you would, out there. So we are going to show some footage from Terry. I have no idea what it is. I haven't seen it. We'll have Larry, the Liberty guy, describe it when it comes. But again, listen, I'm not surprised. I'm not at all surprised to see these protests, and to see them maybe cross the line. I hope they don't cross it too far. Please stay peaceful. But Americans are rightfully frustrated. Americans have had their liberties infringed upon, and Americans have had it with these elite politicians who are so out of touch and tone deaf, and only can think of their own political concern. I am not surprised at all. In fact, I think it had to happen. All right, Larry, I see we've got some video ready to go. What do we got here?
First video geared up. It is a shot of the crowd, and it is an extremely peaceful, extremely positive crowd.
When?
Oh, this is coming into us about an hour, 2 hours ago.
All right.
Speaking, we're up by the Washington Monument, trying to get on higher ground. You can see the crowd up here is huge, and this is not where most of the people are. These are the people who can't get in.
So that looked like the overflow crowd, not the main crowd.
Overflow crowd. There'll be more videos coming up, Sten. Give me a few more minutes.
All right. Yep. Yeah. I'd really like to. I don't know if you can shoot a text or message to Terry and send him the link if he wants to try to call in. I'd love to know what he witnessed. You know, when we had him down there, we just thought there would be a bunch of speeches and, you know, maybe little side things happening, you know, that he would comment on. We never could have anticipated that the protest crowd would storm the Capitol and actually get inside, apparently banging on the chamber doors. Again, we don't know. I haven't heard anything more on the shots that apparently were fired. Again, I'm checking my TV monitors left and right. I got one up there. I got a couple out there. So it's unclear who caused, who started any violence, who might have fired the shots. Was it people illegally, because you can't be carrying a gun in DC, or was it some law enforcement officer who either rightfully so or jumped the gun, so to say, in firing at someone? We just don't know yet.
Stan, Terry and I have been in contact throughout the day, and I can confirm that he is safe. So wherever he is right now, he says he's okay. So I'm trying to get him to call in. But
all right, well, we're glad to know he's safe. I see on the comments that Roland is saying that OAN is reporting 10 minutes ago that Antifa did have their own apparently infiltrators there as Trump supporters, and maybe they're the ones causing the violence. I don't know. Again, these are all reports and rumors. Thank you for that, Roland. The next comment I want to follow up on. All right, you get some more video, then we'll go to another comment. This is more from Terry Garvey, actual video from DC. Go ahead.
Can you see it?
It started and now it's just fuzz.
Just fuzz. All right, we'll keep working on it.
At least that was for me. I don't know about the audience. Peter Giannitto. I don't know if I'm saying it right. I'm Italian. Giannitto. Yeah, it must be Giannitto. Want to fix this, term limits, and kill the lobby. You'll see who really wants to do the people's work. All right. Let's bring this back to Rhode Island for a minute. To me, the coup de grace, if in the next this month, I guess, we hear that Rhode Island will lose one of its 4 prized U.S. congressional seats because we have not kept up population-wise with the rest of the country and most of the other states. If we lose that seat based on the 2020 census, what further proof do we need that this state has become so full of the same kind of elitist politicians, special interests, bureaucrats that we've been speaking of this whole time, that we've been so dominated by these people and catering to the special interests and to the far left agenda, that we are driving people away because Rhode Island is becoming a less and less hospitable place to raise a family, go to school, or build a career. Even if we don't lose that seat, that's the truth. We talk about frustration with the political elite. Well, there's nothing more frustrating than a political elite that ignores the best interests of the people in lieu of their own interests. So that's why we need a people's convention, a state constitutional convention, to change some of these institutionalized advantages that screw us, the people, in favor of the special interests. It's the only solution. We have no legislative path. Doesn't look like we have much of a legal path. The only solution, and electorally, we're electing the wrong people. I'm not sure they represent the majority of Rhode Islanders, at least an informed Rhode Island electorate. Constitutional convention, I believe it's risky, but I believe it's our only path. We'll get a chance to vote on a constitutional convention a little under 4 years. Now, Terry, is that you, Terry, down in DC?
Yeah, I'm here, Mike.
Are you safe?
We are safe. Yeah, what happened was at some point they announced that there was going to be a march to the Capitol, and the police had set up barricades to direct the crowds. Okay, and I've done the march to the Capitol before, and it was always a direct march straight from the mall to the Capitol. But what they did was they routed us around all the city streets, and I knew that we were not going to the Capitol. I could tell. And at one point, we ended up right back at the mall next to the Washington Monument. And at that point, we could see the Capitol off in the distance. And
wait a minute, so are you saying they purposely diverted you away from the Capitol, you think?
They directly, yes, absolutely. That's what they did. They had us walk in a big circle and end up back at the mall. And so then
no wonder everyone was mad, right?
Well, that I'm sure that had something to do with it. So we're looking at the Capitol building off in the distance, and I've been on marches before, and I know at some point the parade backs up. It just stops because people congregate at the Capitol. They don't leave, and there's just no room for all the massive crowds to keep proceeding. So at that point, we decided that it was time to just cut out. And we were about a half a mile from the Capitol at the time. We headed back to the garage, and we drove back to the hotel. So we did not get to see any of the violence at the Capitol at all. We're watching it on TV now.
What would you say? All right, so we're talking with Terry Garvey from Tiverton, who made the trek down there with some friends to be part of the gathering in DC today. What was the mood? I know you were there yesterday, even there Monday night. What was the mood of the crowd? Would you have guessed that it would have led to this kind of action at the Capitol?
It's funny that you should say that, because we actually discussed what our expectations should be today versus yesterday, because yesterday it was a big party. It was joyous and everybody was happy. And there was no sign of what was coming today. And then we figured after what happened down in Georgia, we might see a different tone today. I think what happened in Georgia had a huge effect on how this proceeded today.
No, that's a good point. And then I'm sure, did the word get around to you out on the crowd about Mike Pence's letter to Congress?
No, didn't hear about that.
Have you heard about it yet now?
No.
Yeah, right as Trump was finishing his speech, and right as Congress was convening, Mike Pence published a letter saying that he does not believe he has the constitutional authority, even though he sympathizes with those who believe there was election problems, that he will not unilaterally do anything to block the certification of the votes. He'll allow the process to go through if if the two chambers vote to decertify, but he would not do anything. And we heard rumors that when that hit the crowd, that only incensed them even more. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I guess I knew that Pence had taken that position. I just didn't know that he had written a letter. I used to be in the defense industry, so Washington is very familiar to me. I used to come down here on a regular basis. I've been stunned since I've been here at the change in the city. I don't even feel like I'm in America anymore. The Black Lives Matter signs are everywhere you look.
Really?
It's just unbelievable. Absolutely. And my perspective.
Did you notice any BLM or Antifa people among your ranks?
Not well. You can't tell by their appearance. You can only tell by their behavior. I mean, they try to dress like us and blend into the crowd. So I observed behavior, and today I saw everybody still having a good time. I didn't see signs of what was coming at the Capitol. Let me just say this: I was expecting to see violence today, and I frankly was hoping not to be there when it happened. And fortunately, we weren't. But what's happening now is not unexpected to me.
I said the same thing. I said the same thing, Terry, that after 10 months of being locked up, having our rights curtailed, seeing our cities burn, and law enforcement and the authorities doing nothing about it, and the apparent and obvious voter fraud, and then no court, no legislature, no Congress doing anything about it, the threat of new taxes and socialism being imposed upon us. I mean, there comes a point, right, where it's too much. So let me ask you this, being part of that crowd, before you joined us, when we opened the show an hour ago, the first few callers we had in my opening commentary asked the question, are we surprised and do we support the protesters? We obviously, everybody support what they feel, but do you think they went too far in crossing into the Capitol grounds, past, breaking down whatever barriers were there, defying the Capitol Police? It doesn't look like they've been doing anything too violent that we can see on TV. But you were part of that crowd. Do you support that this is their way of having their voice heard, or do you think they have gone too far?
Well, it's really has to do with my personal perspective on things and the progression. I understood the need to go through the legislative and judicial process that was required. But then the third phase is kinetic. And I, for a long time, haven't seen any way to avoid that. I've been expecting us to get to that point. I see what happened in D.C. today as a first step in that direction. I understand people have been shot. There are people now who are more martyrs to the cause, and that is only going to stoke the flames even more. I'm very concerned how this is going to progress. But on the other hand, the way I look at this, Mike, is
how this day is going to progress, or how
this
election?
No, this whole thing, the whole thing, the whole thing. The way I look at it, Mike, is, and I'm sure this will be a little bit controversial. I'm sure a lot of people don't agree with this, but I see the choice in this country right now is ultimate CCP control of the country. And based on what I'm seeing in Canada, I don't know if you're following what's going on in Canada, but they're ahead of us in the process, believe it or not, because of Trudeau. And I see we have a choice between a kinetic response to this or acceptance of ultimate CCP control with social grading of people, behavior, control of finances, and et cetera. I believe that's where we're heading. There's nothing to stop it now.
Well, yeah, that's clearly the larger overriding question hanging over all of this is, where is our country heading exactly? What are these newly elected officials? Where are they going to take us? What are they going to allow? Where will they draw the line? We know how far left And whether that left goes all the way to China or not, you know, we'll find out. We have very, very good reason to believe that it could. But yeah, this is what is causing it, and you know, it's why I can't blame you and the protests. I'm talking about you as a group, not you personally, for going down there to voice your opinion, for wanting your voice to be heard by those very lawmakers who still have some decisions yet to be made.
Yep.
You know, I think that is what America is. You know, Terry, last comment, then I'll thank you for updating us. Again, we're talking to Terry Garvey, who's in DC, was part of the crowd today, not part of the crowd that stormed the Capitol, if that's the right word. But, you know, it's just, there comes a point, Terry, right? When it's too much is too much.
Well, you know, I'm different from a lot of people. I'm a Vietnam veteran, right? Okay. And I did send you a video, and you may choose to use it or not, but I took a video at the Vietnam Memorial, and I put some commentary in there that I think is really important. And I hope you have the opportunity to show that video.
Let's see. I haven't, Larry has all that. Larry, if we can cue that up later, let's definitely do that. But Terry, all right,
Yeah,
Terry, you want to stay?
Can I just say one more thing?
Sure.
We all have friends and family that we've been trying to warn and trying to convince. You know, what we seem to see so clearly, they haven't been able to see. We've been using information and logic to discuss it with them. We are now transitioning into a point where it won't be logic and information. It will now be consequences. In other words, we can go to the same people going forward and saying, okay, I'm not going to approach this issue with you anymore using logic and information. I'm just going to start identifying the consequences of your choices. And the consequences are going to be right in
potentially
front of us.
taking action, right? I mean, that's the frustration,
right.
when you feel that your legitimate concerns are not being considered,
right.
that you're
and
told to
action,
shut up and don't worry about it. There's only so much of that any people can take. Any people.
Right. And by action, we mean action before the critical point when the entire situation is locked down. And at that point, whatever action, it becomes much more difficult.
The president apparently has called for peace. The vice president has asked for the protesters to depart. I didn't hear it. I saw, if anyone heard it and can either call in or type in. Apparently the president put out a Twitter message. I mean, I saw it on the TV, but I couldn't hear it because I was talking to you here. So if anybody knows exactly what happened there, but Terry,
Mike, I'm watching Fox News as you and I are talking, and I just heard President Trump to say, "I love you, go home." That's what he said.
He did say go home. Okay. Yeah, and I believe they will if they tell him, don't you? This is not going to be a Chaz where people are going to stay there for days,
Mike,
right?
This is phase one of the day. What I'm concerned about is when Antifa comes out tonight, what is going to happen? Because there are going to be a lot of people still in D.C. and they're not going home.
Are you going to be around for that, or are you going to be on your way back?
We're safely in our hotel, and I have no intention of going downtown at this point.
All right. Terry Garvey, thank you for the update. Thank you for being expressing your constitutional freedoms and being part of the fight for freedom. And this is what it is, folks. This is ultimately about freedom. Not many of us feel like we have the freedoms we had decades ago. Not many of us feel like we have the freedoms that the Constitution guarantees that we do have. It's a worthy cause. I'm not yet ready to say it's worth the shedding of blood, but it's a damn worthy cause worth fighting for peacefully at this point, if those two words go together. You know what I mean? I mean, and again, and then there's just the hypocrisy of the media and the elite. Remember, how many years ago was it? 7, 8 years ago, when union workers stormed in a much more violent way, loud way, the Capitol in Wisconsin over Governor Walker's proposed union reforms. They were praised for standing up for their rights as laborers. Do you remember this summer? The overtly murderous, violent, property damaging crowds that burned our cities and cars and tried to torch federal buildings. They were praised for exercising their rights and standing up for what they believed in. But yet these supporters today are being vilified, even by pretty much everybody I've heard, even on what you might call the right-wing media. What a double standard. And then the ultimate hypocrisy. Do you remember when in Portland or other cities, it was suggested that the National Guard be brought in to restore order, and how the Democrats cried what an abuse of federal power that would be, to squash the people, to shut up the people, to abuse their power? Well, Nancy Pelosi today asked for the National Guard to be sent to the U.S. Capitol to protect her little fat behind. What hypocrisy. All right, Larry, we got some video. What do you got here?
We do. It's going to take just a tiny bit of setup because the connection from DC was very bad today. Terry worked very hard to get us some great videos, and this is him talking at the Vietnam Memorial. So you can't. It's not 100% clear from the video when we play it, but the video image is frozen. But I'm going to play it now.
This is what? What are we looking at here?
The Vietnam Memorial.
Way I do, and I like to say I do it.
That's the Vietnam Memorial?
Yep.
But I'd like to introduce you to another group that matters in my mind. You should know where I am now. What I don't understand is why so many people were willing to die for their country then and so few are today. You better include this video.
So this is Terry talking about his service, and he shared with me the name of his friend that passed away for fighting in Vietnam, and it was Martin Keogh. Martin Keogh passed away, and Terry wanted us to remember the veterans for their service.
Yes, yes, and that and it's just amazing how the elite don't think that freedom is worth fighting for, or is even worthy of the protesters. It's what these veterans fought and died for. And it wasn't just our freedom, it was for freedom of other people in other parts of the world. It's the most precious of all rights outside of life itself. And to have, this is what this is. This is not about Donald Trump, in my view. Trump is just the voice of the Americans who love this country and love the freedoms we are supposed to have. And if he's the only one who will defend those rights, then they will support him. Hopefully it doesn't come to supporting him to the death or to anyone else's death. But it's happened in the past. That right to freedom has been fought for in country after country and in our country. Why is it irrelevant now when those freedoms are being infringed upon? Why? And Terry's right. Thank you to all those veterans and to your friend who passed away. Now, I didn't, Larry. I've seen the Vietnam Memorial in D.C. and it's not a field; it's a big wall. I don't know exactly what we were looking at there. It just looked like pardon me?
On the other side, far away.
What do you mean? You mean it was behind those trees?
Yeah, behind the trees.
All right, so he probably wasn't allowed to get close to it. I imagine they were keeping the protesters away from the monument, I'm guessing, there. All right, I see we have somebody that signed in, Larry. Do we want to take a comment from the 528 number?
528, hit *6 to unmute yourself now.
Hello, welcome to the Dugout. What's your name?
Hi, Mike. John Cullen here from Lincoln.
Oh, hey, John. How are you?
Good, good. How are you guys?
Well, what do you think of today's events?
Well, I'm a peaceful, person. I'm a peaceful protester. I'm a Trump supporter. I'm a supporter of the rule of law, And I look forward to the election challenge. And I believe that, as Americans fighting a revolution, fighting a civil war, and all the protests that we had in this country, that we have a right to peacefully protest. And I'm glad that there were 12 senators and I guess 100 or more, congressmen that want to, challenge this election and these ballots. And by rule of law, they have a right to do so. And as far as peaceful protest, out on the streets of D.C., that's what we would like to see. And we know that people go over the edge, whether it would be the liberals or maybe some, conservatives. That's something we do not support.
Yeah.
And
All right,
I'm
let me ask you this, John. It's evident now that with Mike Pence's letter, with the words of Mitch McConnell and some other senators, that the Congress, neither the Congress nor the vice president, are going to vote or work to decertify the results. That's a given. All right. Before today, we didn't know that. Before 3 hours ago, we didn't know that, or 4 hours ago, but now we know that. But the idea is out there of Ted Cruz's idea of forming a commission like they did in 1877. I imagine it would be one that would be televised nationally. So all this election integrity stuff can be aired out in front of America. Do you support that idea? And do you think it has any chance?
Well, are you telling me, Mike, right now is that I know it was supposed to start, I guess, this evening where with the joint meeting of the House and the Senate, they were going to, challenge the. Now, are you telling me that?
Yes.
Maybe bring me up to speed.
All right, I'll bring everyone up to speed just to review. It's good to review.
That's not going to happen.
So at 1 o'clock today, just as Congress was convening in the joint session to consider this issue, Mike Pence, first of all, issued a letter saying that he would not unilaterally not certify the results unless both of the chambers voted to do so. Okay, that he does not feel he has the constitutional authority to unilaterally make such a decision. So that was one option down. Then the House and the Senate got about 15, maybe 20, 25 minutes into their debates when they had to shut down because the protesters, for security reasons, were starting to threaten the Capitol premises. Yes. And they breached some of the security there. But in those 15 to 20 minutes, we heard from Mitch McConnell, we heard from we heard from the guy from Pennsylvania there, I can't remember his name, the senator from Pennsylvania, and of course all the Democrats. The Democrats will never not vote in unison, but they would say they would not support such challenges either. So, and that was when Arizona, they had broken for debate because Arizona came up and it was contested. So it is no longer an option that Congress, that both houses it'll never happen that both houses will vote to decertify any of the electors. But Ted Cruz in his talk during that brief period did put forth the notion of establishing a commission. Now, an earlier caller had asked, well, what's going to be the process to vote to see whether or not that commission actually happens or not? And I don't know that answer, but it's a question out there. So they're putting it forward as a in-between step. If you don't want to vote to decertify and you don't want to just stick your head in the sand and say, oh, there's nothing to see here, let's have this commission, let's air it out for 5 or 10 days before the American public, and then we'll send it back to the states to decide if they want to change their electors or not. I think that's a very reasonable play. I thought Ted Cruz established himself as a fair-minded statesman today, living to the spirit of the Constitution, appreciating both sides of the debate, and offering transparency, which I believe is always the best answer. Transparency as the solution. Your thought, John. Your final thought.
Yeah, well, as far as the commission, yeah, I'm absolutely in favor of that. I would have liked to see, because the chaos that is going on in D.C. now, it seems like this has short-circuited the senators who are in favor of arguing and bringing forth their proofs and their contentions of fraud in this election. Obviously, this has been short-circuited. I would have liked to see that. Like I say,
yes, it has been short-circuited. The theory is the talking heads have been saying that where before there might have been challenges to 5 or 6 states. Now that it's so evident that this isn't going to go anywhere, and each of these challenges takes 2 hours. Now, nobody anticipated at that point there would be this delay because of the security breach.
Yes.
But now they're
Right.
saying maybe
Yeah.
1, maybe 2 more states might get challenged, and then they'll basically realize they're not going to win this battle and move on. Now, again,
Right. Yeah.
can the commission come up instead? I don't know. But John, thanks for being yourself being part of the
All right.
democratic process, and thank you for calling to end the dugout.
Thank you, Mike.
Okay. So, wow. So we're wrapping up our show, another 5 or 10 minutes here. What a day. We told you that today would be a momentous day. We feared there might be violence. It doesn't look like there was mass violence. Again, I'm trying to monitor TV screens and look at headlines as I'm talking to you on this show. The president has asked for people to leave. I imagine they will, and I imagine they'll do so peacefully. I think as Terry Garvey mentioned a little while ago, that the real violence might be caused by the other side as people start to leave the Capitol, get onto the streets of DC, try to go back to their cars or hotels, and will they be met by angry Antifa or BLM mobs, and what will that produce? So I think this day still has a lot more to go. Whether they reconvene Congress and retake up these deliberations on the challenges. Right now, we're in the middle of the challenge to the state of Arizona's electors. Will there be more challenges? And again, as we just heard from John, that process, I think he used a good term, that process pretty much has been short-circuited by Republican senators and the Republican Vice President Pence. But we all pretty much expected that this wasn't going to go anywhere. It was my hope that in these 2-hour debate sessions, instead of debating whether or not there should be these challenges, that real hard evidence, new evidence, as the president promised, would be presented. And I've got to say, I support this president. I believe he's right about election problems. But you have to produce the goods. You have to show me the meat. Show me the money, or where's the beef? That's what it is. Where's the beef? Show me the money. And they've made their constitutional arguments, which are good ones. Oh yeah, and I did promise somebody else. I do have to. Let's just go back to those constitutional arguments. Do you understand what happened in Rhode Island? Because it's the same thing that happened in Pennsylvania, and it's the same thing that happened in Michigan. It's the same thing that happened in Georgia, and I'm not sure about the other contested states. If Rhode Island had been a swing state, then the same thing. We would put Rhode Island in that as far as what happened. But for years, the left has been trying to increase remote voting, whether that's through the mail. Eventually, they want to have you vote through your computer somehow, and because they know that it makes it easier to cheat. It's that simple, and they are masters at cheating. There's no question about it. And as they've learned this year, there's nobody to challenge them. There's no court that will hear their case. There's no state legislature that will take up the issue seriously. And there's no U.S. Congress that will take up the issue seriously. Thus, the anger of these protesters today. Thank God they're staying reserved, it appears, and not creating mass violence. But Rhode Island, so Rhode Island wanted to change the election laws to make it easier to cheat. They say they want to make it easier to vote, but we know the truth. So what did they do? First, they tried to they unilaterally changed the rules for the primary. Then they actually put forward legislation over the summer to change the voting laws, to remove, to Now, the idea to send out mass ballots to everybody was not in the legislation. That was decided upon unilaterally by the Secretary of State and the Board of Elections, basically approved, tacitly approved by the governor. Over the summer, they tried to actually pass legislation to remove the signature or notary validations of those mailed-in ballots, whether it was an absentee ballot or unsolicited mail ballot. And it failed. The Senate, the Rhode Island Senate failed to pass that legislation. But that didn't stop the left. What they then do, they took a couple far left groups, ACLU, League of Women's Voters, Common Cause, I think it was those three. They sued the Secretary of State and the Board of Elections, saying because of the pandemic, it's unhealthy to require people to get together to sign or put a stamp on something, even though you can go to the store and do all kinds of other stuff. But we need to eliminate. So they sued. The two sides conspired, where one side would sue the other side, both wanting the same thing. And this is what the environmental left has done for years with environmental issues. And instead of actually going to a hearing where the plaintiff would have their day, against the defendant, the plaintiff being these far left groups, the defendant being the Secretary of State, they reached a settlement to get the result they both wanted in the first place. See, it was a joke. It was a conspiracy. It was manipulation of the court system. And then they present to the judge, well, instead of having a hearing, we've agreed to this settlement. That's what a consent decree is. You've heard a lot about the consent decree in Georgia. That's what happened. But yet it was a Republican Secretary of State who reached an agreement with the far left Stacey Abrams and her crew down there. But in Rhode Island, the far left Secretary of State and the far left Board of Elections reached an agreement with the far left advocacy groups who sued them to get the thing they both wanted. That's a complete bastardization of the court system. Judge approved the consent decree. The Rhode Island Republican Party, along with the National Republicans, sued. Judges wouldn't overturn it. Again, the judges just rubber stamped. Again, the Constitution says only the state legislature can change voting rules. But in this case, a lawsuit by far left groups and a far left Secretary of State and Board of Election, rubber stamped by the courts, reached the same end, an unconstitutional end, but yet no court would stand up for the Constitution. No court would stand up. So in my view, Rhode Island's election was unconstitutional as well. We had Charles Callahan, Senate candidate, earlier in the show. He was way up before the mail ballots were counted. I mean, he was up like 63% to 37%. And then these mail ballots came in. I sincerely doubt that had the election laws not been illegally, unconstitutionally changed, Charles Callahan would be right now a senator in Rhode Island. Rhode Island's elections were unconstitutional, but yet there was no court to even hear the case. Well, in Rhode Island, there's really nobody with enough voice to even contest the case. Certainly the media wasn't going to look into it on their own. There's no Republican with any status or courage to really stand up and jump on the table and say this is not right. We don't have that voice in our state. We try to be a voice, but we're not that voice. There is no voice in this state. It is so one-sided between the media, the political elite, the elected officials, and the bureaucrats, and all the other, even the business leaders in this state. They all sing from a one songbook, and there is no other song that you hear in this state. We try to be that voice, and we hope you'll keep tuning in, because that's our role, is to be that voice in the wilderness. Unfortunately, it is a wilderness in this state. And then when you do speak out, they recriminate. against you. It's tough going. And this, and this frustration you're hearing in me right now is what I'm sure those protesters in DC are feeling and thinking as they wanted to have their voices heard. We must have both sides of the debate of every issue heard. When you shut down one side, continually shut them down, or you ridicule them. I said after the Trump election, for how long do you think it's gonna be okay that you keep calling people like us good people, racists and deplorables and all the other things? At some point, there's a consequence for that. And for all the other reasons we talked about, let me review those again and then we'll end the show. I don't know what else you would expect. Never justifying violence, but the kind of mass peaceful protest you just saw there in DC, and I think it was peaceful, and it looks like people are leaving now, as I expected they would. But after almost a year of pandemic fear, lockdowns, having our First Amendment rights to gather, our religious rights to worship, after having those rights and others trampled, being asked to have our neighbors spy on us by the governor and turn us in if we have people at our house, being thrown out of our jobs and laid off, losing our businesses and our investments in those businesses, being lied to by the medical and political acts and bureaucrats, seeing big media, big tech and social media shut us down, cover up the truth in elections and in other issues, eliminating health options like hydroxychloroquine and others that could have saved people's lives just because the vaccine was the desired end. After seeing our cities and towns burned, the looters given a pass, the criminals arrested and then released again to terrorize again, and then everything to do with the election fraud, seeing the courts not engaged, seeing the state legislatures not engaged, and now today seeing the U.S. Congress saying, just shut up, we're not even going to engage, we're not even going to hear you, we're just going to ignore your pleas. What the hell else do you expect to happen from a people who have experienced such tyranny? It's not surprising to me. If it ends up that was a peaceful protest, even though they pushed through security, maybe defied the Capitol Police, I support them. I for one, have the courage to stand up and say, I support those patriots. Will you do the same? What a day. I hope there's no more violence to come. I don't know what's going to happen with we know what's going to happen with the chamber votes on any contested electors. That's not going to happen. Whether this commission happens, that Ted Cruz wisely put forth, it was the most diplomatic statesman thing I've heard in a long time. I don't know. And then I'll just leave you with this thought. Then there's one more trump card to play, if you may. And again, that card better not be played unless you've got the smoking gun to show the American people that moment. But there is talk of, and it's constitutional, I guess, that there is a constitutional lawful insurrection act, or if the president feels the country is under attack from without or within, maybe you could call treasonous rigging of the elections if it were true, and if you had the smoking gun. Maybe you could call that an attack. You could impose the Insurrection Act and impose a kind of martial law, only to the extent where we wouldn't be having tanks rolling down the streets, but we would be having hearings in a military tribunal. actually having those hearings that I don't think we should, I mean, I don't want to have military tribunals. I want to have open hearings on all this evidence. I want to know whether Trump and his team have been giving us fake news, or whether the media and the left have been giving us the fake news when it comes to election. We need to know. Again, if this level of crimes have been committed, and if you've got the smoking gun, two big ifs, then I don't think you can argue with the Insurrection Act. This would be treason. It would have to be vanquished from our country. The deep state, the swamp would have to be drained, if that were true. To me, it's highly unlikely it's true. But do not go there. The last card to be played now. Do not go there. And we'll end with this, what Rudy Giuliani said. In the end, we're either going to be, our team, are either going to be proven to be fools for having put forth all this stuff without it going anywhere, or it's going to be proven that there are real criminals out there. Right now, unless they produce that smoking gun, it looks like there's a lot of people who are fools right now, even though I believe there are criminals out there. Kind of having it both ways, but that's the way it goes. Let's go 2 more minutes. I see we got one more caller. Peter Hewitt, are you there? Oh, we might have just. Oh, there he is.
Give him 1 second.
All right. So we got our last caller. We're still trying to connect to the audio with Peter. All right, Peter, we're just about to end the show. You'll get the final question. What do you got? Hi, Pete.
Pete, can you hear us? Peter's a real patriot.
Yes, he is.
Wish we could get him, but doesn't look like we're going to be able to.
A Bristol patriot, if I recall.
Absolutely.
Peter, one last chance, or we'll close the show. All right, we'll close the show. So tomorrow, unless there's something really dramatic coming out of DC, tomorrow's show will be all about the COVID pandemic, recent data analysis, talk about vaccines. We'll have Dr. Andrew Bostom on as our guest for the whole hour. And that'll be tomorrow at 4 o'clock on Thursday. Thank you for tuning in today. We had a great lively audience today, a great discussion on a very historic day in Washington, D.C. For In the Dugout, Mike Stein.